teen, if you don't have a healthy relationship, now might be the time to try and create a healthy relationship with your teen, because ultimately, our young people need us now more than ever. There is so much up in the air. There is so much at stake. They're having to make decisions about their lives that really, I know that at my age, at their age, I did not have to deal with such decisions. But such is life, and what we can do is we can literally empower our teenagers to make wise decisions, whether they be at home, whether they be off in college. And I thought I would talk about this a little bit, because there are a lot of parents who have kids who are going off to college. And the major anxiety and concern is, will these kids be able to make wise decisions that could potentially protect them from getting sick and possibly save their lives? There is so much that is out of our hands. And I think what needs to happen is we need to have conversations to empower our young people to make the right decisions. So the thing about parenting teenagers, and I have 4 teenagers. I have a 19-year-old, 17-year-old, and 14-year-old twins. And I can tell you that it becomes less about control and more about guidance, because there comes a point where if you seek to control, you will lose them. They will stop talking to you about the things that matter to them. They will stop sharing with you the concerns they have. You kill communication when you try to control a teenager, because then they just drift away from you. So I wanted to make this clear, because I know from experience, and if you are a parent from a very traditional sort of African background, this can be a tough one. You know, many of us have been raised and were raised that, you know, what the parent says goes. And that whole idea that as long as you're in your parents' home, they get to tell you what to do. But the truth of the matter is, kids find ways around that. Not only that, it builds a lot of resentment. And when your children resent you, they can start doing harmful things to themselves in the hope of hurting you. And I'm going to say this again. They will start doing harmful things to themselves, making decisions that harm themselves in a bid to hurt you, in a bid to rebel against you. So for many of us who are African parents, who are raising our children away from the African continent, this is really important to keep in mind. And when you lose your children in a society that does not support your parenting, you are in big trouble. So I just wanted to share some tips about, and guys, if this is helpful to you, please share it out to your groups, share it out to your friends, your mom groups, your dad groups. This is really important. Control versus guidance is what is required for teenagers. When they are younger, yeah, you control a lot more. But as they get older, you let the control fall and you start to give guidance. So here are some things that we need to keep in mind. It is very normal for teenagers to rebel against their parents' values, their parents' practices, and their parents' belief. This is normal. You cannot look at your teenager who is rebelling against everything you stand for and call them a bad kid just because they don't agree with how you have done things. This is a process called individuation. They are literally trying to figure out who they are outside of you. And this is an important thing that they figure this out, because at some point soon in the near future, they are leaving your home to go and kind of find themselves in the world. So it's a very normal process for teenagers to pull away from their parents' beliefs, what they stand for. And it's not an indictment on you as a parent. This is a normal hormone-driven thing. If you try to offset that by controlling, you will lose your teen, or you will turn your teen into a rebellious and very angry creature. So that's one thing to remember. Second, open dialogue is very important. And I said this when I prefaced this. If you don't have a good relationship with your teenager, maybe now is the time to start creating that. Remember, you are the adult in this. And so how your teenager responds is going to have to come from you. You can't sit there and say, well, you know what? She doesn't talk to me. Hello, she's a kid. She's a teenager with raging hormones, with all kinds of things she's having to deal with in her head. You are the adult. You are the parent. You approach your teenager over and over. And your approach matters too. It's not a, hey, like, come, let's sit here. You know what? They'll look at you up and down and they'll walk away. So what you want to do is create a loving environment in which to start having conversations with your teenagers about any and everything, right? Let them describe whatever issue is going on, whatever it is they want to talk about. Now, I know in many households, the sex discussion doesn't happen between kids and their parents. They just don't. And I'm here to tell you this. If you're not going to talk to your children about sex, they're going to learn about it from the internet, which is the worst place any kid can learn about sex, both girls and boys. Not only that, they will get information from their peers and their friends, and most times it is distorted and it is not accurate. I therefore urge parents to create an environment where sex is demystified so that you can have discussions that are constructive with your children. If you don't have those discussions, then what you're basically doing is you're putting your kid out there to deal with adult issues without being equipped for it. I hope this makes sense. What is being taught kids out there is basically most guys will go to pornography. And in there, we find objectification of women, we find violence against women, we find a sort of macho, toxic masculinity on display in a lot of pornography. That's what your child will start to believe is sex. That's your boy child. On the women's side, if they do go to pornography, they see women objectified. They see women demeaned. They see women basically doing things in a manner that has them doing stuff where men don't reciprocate. They have women in there being, what could you even call it? Being treated very violently. That is what your teenage girl is going to believe sex is all about. We need to take control of our own issues around sex and sexuality so that we can be there for our children. Yeah, so that's just that. So that's it. Talk about the consequences of each thing. So they bring you a problem. Discuss it. I'm going to use sex because that's like the nearest right now in my head because, yeah, such conversations are happening around here. You want to paint different scenarios for them. You know, should I start having sex? Should I not start having sex? These are normal things that teenagers are going through. You won't know it if you're not talking to them. And so don't think that your teenager not talking about sex with you means that they're not thinking about it, haven't thought about it, aren't discussing it with their peers. They are. This is the age at which this happens, right? So this is the time where as a parent, you need to be there so that they can talk to you about it. Now, here's the thing that I personally think is very useful. State the facts first about anything. What I found with mine is they'll ask me, but you know, what about you personally? Like, okay, these are the facts. What do you think, mommy? And I tell them exactly what I think, which is that I think at your age, you're not ready. And here's why. And you give them that whole spiel about sex coming with responsibility. Are you ready to bear the responsibilities and sometimes the unintended consequences of being sexually active? And you just laid out that this is what is here at stake. The decision is ultimately yours, but this is what you need to know as you make this decision. Right? So it's very important to make sure that you can have open dialogue, lay out their options before them, the pros and the cons of each situation, and then let them choose a decision. And this is where the control has to step back. Because remember, you are teaching your children adulthood. When they are teens, they're on the cusp of adulthood. You're trying to make decisions for them is not helpful because they're not always going to be able to come to you to make a decision for them. And a decision that's right for your teen may not be a decision that sits comfortably with you, and you've got to be ready to accept that. This is really important. Then the next thing is, if they follow through with the decision that they've made, keep an open dialogue so that they don't feel judged, they don't feel condemned, they don't feel shame, so that they don't come back to you and kind of share with you. Like, how did that go? And they can share with you, if a mistake has been made, can you please be gracious? Because you made your own mistakes, okay? You made mistakes. So don't then hold that mistake over your child's head, and don't withdraw your love. Your teenager will need your support and your undying, unconditional love at that time. That will empower them and give them courage to go out and try again or make new decisions. But if you disempower them, what you're literally doing is you're disenabling them from thinking through things and making decisions for themselves. This is really important. So how else can you help your teen in terms of making wise decisions? In a family setting, let your teens voice their opinions. They need to be allowed to speak. They need to be allowed to voice what they feel and what they think on any given situation. It shouldn't be a children are to be seen and not heard type setup. You can do that when they're younger, but let me tell you, you cannot do that with your teenagers, because once again, you will lose them. Second thing is, involve them in decision-making processes that involve the entire family, right? You guys want to go somewhere on vacation. Have them have some input as to where they're going to spend their free time, right? The other thing is, set realistic goals for them. Teenagers' perspective is not always accurate about things. So what you do is you don't kill their dream or their expectation, but you kind of help them get perspective on it. And you do that by literally asking them the correct questions so that in the end, they themselves see that whatever it is they had in mind is not quite what it is, right? Be open and understanding when your teenager wants to talk to you about something that makes you feel some type of way. For example, if your teenager comes and says, you know what, I don't believe in God, your reaction and response is very important in that setup. If you happen to be a Christian family and your kid comes and says, I'm an atheist, the wrong response would be for you to blow up at them and tell them that they're going to hell in a handbasket. Like, really? How does that help them? What you want to do is show some interest and understanding and ask them how they've come to this decision. Like, wow, you're an atheist. Cool. Well, tell me about it. How did you get here? Because obviously, you didn't bring them up that way, but this is what they're telling you they are. And sometimes teenagers are telling you these things to see your response or reaction. It's a question of, does she love me unconditionally? Will she shame me or condemn me? And they'll test that by coming out with outrageous statements like that. And so you stay in your power and you simply ask them, you know what, let's sit and talk about this. What's going on? That's how you empower your young people, and that's how you continue to keep an open relationship so that even when your teens are out of sight, you know that they know they can come to you when they need you. And one last thing about this is remember that it is not what you do for your kids. It is what you teach them to do for themselves that is ultimately the most important thing. Not what you do for them, but what you teach them to be able to do for themselves. And that's really important. So I know there are mamas here who are probably sending kids out to college. I'm one of them. And like I said, they are going to be having to make some decisions about themselves, about their lives in our absence, right? So your friends are all going to a party, and the question you should ask your teen is, have you gone through the scenarios of what would happen if you went to said party and say you have a mask and you get there, no one else is masking, no one is social distancing? What do you do? You can have these conversations with them so that when the time comes, they can remember the process they went through to come to a decision whereby they choose to keep themselves safe. You're not going to be in control of that anymore. You can't say to your teen, if I hear that you went to a party, you will see me. You will never hear then that they went to a party. You'll never even hear that they thought about it, because then they'll tell you what you want to hear. So you want to go through a process so that they're making decisions. And remember, teenagers have very poor impulse control for the most part. I think girls are slightly better than boys, but impulse control is tough, and therefore they're prone to peer pressure. But if you empower them by having these conversations, believe me, they hear your voice. In those situations where time comes to make a decision, they can hear the process that they did with you, and they can hear your voice. Remember that. That's why your voice has to be loving and gentle, so that when they hear your voice, they don't think, you know what, I'm going to do it anyway, but she'll never know. No. You want them to hear the voice that says, be reasonable. I trust you to make the right choice. And they will make the right choice. So yes, this is the time. So I just wanted to come on here and to just share this little bit. Like I said, most times when I'm sharing stuff with you guys, it's literally stuff I'm having to put into practice myself in real time. And this is what's going on around here. So I love you. I appreciate you guys. Have a great Sunday. To all the mamas who are sending their kids away, I know this coming week is a big wave of us who are doing this. Like I said, I so empathize with you, and I hope you empathize with me. We are all just hanging tight, and we just have to trust for the best outcome and to trust that our children will make the right decisions when it's called for. Love you guys. Take good care of yourselves and talk to you soon. Bye.